Hey guys, Collin Chi, certified nutritional consultant, numerologer, bringing you another talk today. Today I want to talk about a place called Gobekli Tepe. Okay, this is an excavation site in Turkey that's happening right now, where German archaeologists are excavating this megalithic stone site of giant megalithic structures that they think is about 7,000 years older than Stonehenge, one of the oldest megalithic built structures that we found to date. Why is this important? Why does this matter? I'm going to go into a little bit about a possible global cataclysm that happened due to a comet around the time of the Younger Dryas period. I'm going to be talking about Graham Hancock, Andrew Collins. These guys know a little bit more about this than me. But it's important to know a little bit about history and the possibility of a restart of humanity after a great global catastrophe and flood that may have possibly happened. And it's important to research this stuff because there's an ancient flood myth in every freaking culture. The Native Americans, the Egyptians, the Babylonians, Sumerians, all over the world, there is evidence of global flooding. So I'm going to talk to you about some of this, obviously mentioned in the Bible. So this is important stuff. I'm going to go into a little bit of anthropology and other things. So Gobekli Tepe, okay? These megalithic structures, okay, that we see around the world, we generally see it at energy points around the globe, where there seems to be a planetary grid. And there was a planetary grid at some point. You know, you've got these pyramids all over the world. You've got these giant stone structures. Obviously, they had some skill with working with stone that either surpasses or is equivalent to what we do today. And we think it surpasses what we do today. So, it's amazing to ponder how these people could drill through granite and how they could cut, 50 million ton blocks. And how they could build these structures. They think Gobekli Tepe is 50 times larger than Stonehenge. What they've excavated so far is about the size of Stonehenge, and there's 50 times more excavated 50 times more laying under the earth. They've done, some kind of, they send radio waves through the earth or microwaves through the earth, and they determine, they can map underneath the earth. We're finding megalithic structures buried underwater in Japan. Come on, it makes sense that at some point the entire world's made mostly of water, right? Just like there's a tide that there's high tide and low tide. Wouldn't you think there would be a high tide of the entire planet and a low tide of the entire planet? At some point, it makes sense that there was probably a comet that hit the Earth. As far as Gobekli Tepe thinks, they think that there was this comet that hit the Earth around or anywhere from 12,800 years ago to 11,600 years ago. A giant comet. So here's the theory around this Gobekli Tepe. Okay, these amazing stone masons, workers that these people at this time period, this is why it's so amazing, because mainstream media thinks that we were hunter-gatherers that didn't have any of this kind of knowledge to build these kind of structures at this ancient of a time. We are supposed to be walking around cavemen in loincloths and not able to do these amazing feats. So it rewrites history. So 12,800 years ago to 11,600 years ago, okay, a comet hits Canada, mainly North America. A lot of North America and Canada was covered by a giant ice cap because this was when there was an ice age happening and there was still a lot of ice covering North America. Okay, around 21,000 years ago was the peak of the last ice age, and you start to slowly there begins a warm up. And then it slowly begins warming up a little bit. There's a little bit of evidence of the glaciers already melting a little bit as the planet was warming up. Then boom, this comet hits, creates fires all over the Earth. Okay, I'm going to talk to you about the science behind this. It creates fires all over the Earth, melts, hits this Canadian, North American ice cap, melts a shit ton of water very quickly, sending tidal waves all over the world, that really could have flooded the entire world. I mean, you look at the Sphinx. If you know anything about Egyptian research, the Sphinx shows us that there was water surrounding the Sphinx for a long, long period of time, based on how the rock looks around the base of the Sphinx. So they've shown that the water was coming up to about the neck area of the Sphinx for a number of years. So giant flooding, fires everywhere all over the world that created this ash cloud, to some degree covering the atmosphere, blocking the sunlight, and then you go into this Younger Dryas period of extreme cold temperatures, and they have very good records of these cold temperatures. They can see it very easily in geological surveys of the Earth. They found all over in a 50 million square mile radius evidence of a layer of soot at this time period, 12,800 to 11,600 BC, or 12,800 to 11,600 years ago. A layer of soot, 50 million square miles all over the Earth. We've found it, okay? And in this layer, there are heavy elements which can only be created by extreme temperatures, such as a blast of a comet, or massive amounts of fires. Heavy elements such as iridium, nanodiamonds, which are only created from this type of event, as well as melt glass. These things, the melting point of quartz is what it takes in order to create this melt glass. Okay, very high temperatures due to this giant comet impact, and they found an impact in Canada that shows this. They found this layer at the same time period all over the world that shows soot and these things I just mentioned. So you have these fires, so you have this ash cloud. Then they theorized that during this time period, so then like I said, the climate was warming a little bit, and then you have this comet, and then it plunges the Earth into an extreme cold temperature time period of about 1,200 years, called the Younger Dryas period. And then what happens is, in this cold period, another part of that comet path hits again. This is like, imagine Armageddon. I mean, there's multiple streams of this comet as it was revolving around the sun or the Earth or whatever. Another part of the tail of that comet hits again, which then this time lands in the ocean, in all the water that has been created, which then causes all this water vapor to go up into the atmosphere, which mixes with this ash cloud, which then causes a lot of precipitation, a lot of rain all over the world, causing even more flooding. Okay, eventually, 1,200 years pass. Slowly, the water starts to evaporate and ebb away as time goes on. Temperatures start to go up again. Okay, temperatures go up dramatically, quickly at this point. So this Gobekli Tepe, part of the picture, they think were where some of the first people restarted civilization after this flood. Okay, so we were intelligent, had amazing technology way before this flood. Lost a lot of it. A lot of lives were lost in the flood. A lot of wildfires, killing off a lot of there's mass extinctions during this period, which we have evidence of great mammoths and saber-toothed tigers. All kinds of creatures dying. This Gobekli Tepe is on a mountain in Turkey, right near the mountain of Ararat, which the Bible mentions is where Noah's Ark, they thought, landed, and where Moses is said to have been born in this area of Turkey as well. I don't I don't take the Bible literally. I think there's some parts of the Bible that have some truths. Um, I can't say I'm a Christian or anything. I don't see anything wrong with Christianity, but um, not to go off on a religion tangent, I'm just stating, that I'm not necessarily a believer or not a believer in mainstream Christianity. I'm just talking about the Bible. Just take it. It has nothing to do with my religious beliefs. So anyway, these people are thought to have restarted civilization in this area. The reason they think this also is because the most ancient form of wheat exists right next to this area in Gobekli Tepe in Turkey. And so they think that these people invented agriculture. They think that this group called the Swiderians, which came from the north, that survived some of the flooding, landed in this area and gave some of these people that were living in the area some amazing knowledge that they had about stone making and tool making to build these structures, and they had knowledge of the sky. They call these people the sky people. They mainly not because they're aliens, but because they had knowledge of astronomy, astrology. This is why a lot of these ancient sites are aligned with star systems, Orion's belt in Egypt, etc. They think that this one is aligned with the Northern Cross, I believe, because in ancient cultures they believed that your soul, some of these cultures, your soul was supposed to ascend through certain star systems and portals and gateways, and they had this kind of knowledge to do this. They thought, and a lot of these sites are more religious in nature. Especially Gobekli Tepe, we theorize it was a temple of sorts, some kind of place of worship, some kind of place of ascending to these, or some kind of commemoration of these happenings in the sky. So these Swiderians, they think maybe could have been hybrids that were, because around this time you're talking about there were a lot of different hominids on the earth at this point. We found at least 22 different hominids at this point that are at least released to the mainstream. There's probably a lot more. And Denisovans and Denisovan hominids, as well as Neanderthals, still live on in our DNA to this day, these different forms of hominids. So they think that maybe, these Denisovans mixing with Neanderthals, maybe these Swiderians or something had some kind of interesting knowledge because they were these different kind of hybrids. Maybe they weren't mixed with Cro-Magnon. Maybe they were. For whatever reason, they had this knowledge. So they built this site. And it's just an amazing site. It's just, 50 times larger than Stonehenge. You're talking about, how do they construct? How do they move these giant blocks? How do they cut these giant blocks? How do they do these things? It's very interesting because, like I said, we expect them to not have had this technology if as a species we're supposed to evolve towards greater and greater complexity and more knowledge, if we think that we're evolving linearly and not psychically, to the point that we are gaining more knowledge as time goes on. This is the philosophy, that we gain more knowledge as time goes on, and so we are better and better at what we do. But yet we find in the older the building of these structures, actually the better the quality, which is strange because we would think as time goes on we'd get better at certain things. But so obviously a lot of this, if you know anything about Egyptian archaeology, you will agree with where I'm going with this, that there was a global cataclysm. It's not too far-fetched. We also think a comet hit and killed all the dinosaurs. Why couldn't it hit during the time of man? And that we had to start over, and that we did lose a little bit of knowledge in certain areas. You know, our brains were actually a lot bigger. If you look at Denisovans, some people think were the giants, a lot of them being 7 feet tall, very tall people, very large skulls, very elongated skulls naturally. They think that a lot of these people in these cultures that have come after started to bind and shape their head to try and mimic these very large people. Why wouldn't you think that some of the ancient hominids would be taller and some would be shorter? We know about the Hobbit people, they call them. I forget the exact scientific name. I think it's Australopithecus or what is it? One of the Australian hominids, I believe, were said to be like 4 feet tall or 5 feet tall. A lot of them very, very short. Why wouldn't there be an ancient hominid that was much taller? So if you've ever heard about giants or Nephilim, or, you know, you might consider these peoples as being, you know, the Bible talks about giants were upon the earth around this time, etc. Why couldn't these people have been just a different hominid or a mixture of hominids? You know, makes sense to me. So just interesting stuff. Wanted to make you guys aware of that kind of stuff. I think it's really, really interesting. And I think it adds to our history and makes us realize that life is precious on this planet. It can end at any moment. We should be thankful, and we should study our past, and we should have an open mind about these different things and not shut out, you know, part of our past. So pretty cool stuff. Gobekli Tepe, Graham Hancock, Andrew Collins. Check these guys out. Andrew Collins is really, really great about it. I think he's one of the best. He's got great videos on crop circles as well. So look into him. And if you like a consultation on nutrition or numerology, I'm really the guru of those more than anything, especially in nutrition. Hit me up at CollinChi@gmail.com. I'll put a link in the description. As always, make sure you subscribe, subscribe if you want updates, and you'll get an email every time that we upload a new video. So hit that subscribe button, and as always, rise.